Last week, I shared a story about a participant at a workshop that I facilitated at NACY's annual conference this past fall. And the participant had shared that she didn't really have access to nature at her preschool. And while they had a very small garden plot, she didn't feel like she could actually garden with children because it was too small. Hello, I'm Nicole Drivlis-Fravel, and this is Wildwood Teaching. And this is a common misconception that in order to effectively have a teaching garden with children, you need fairly large, fancy, raised beds, right? But the reality is that any planting activity, even if children are just planting that bean seed in a paper towel in a plastic bag, can teach children about life cycles, about plant anatomy, give them space to perform science experiments, teach them about responsibility and empathy as they are caring for another living thing. But today, I want to go beyond the bean seed to talk about ways that you can maximize your outdoor space for gardening. So we are going to get to the layout of a small garden bed, but first I want to talk a little bit about guerrilla gardening, right? Using any available space for gardening. You don't necessarily need a garden bed. So do you have a fence that might be a home for a climbing vine like grapes, clematis, wisteria? Children can plant seeds along the base of the fence for it to trained up the fence. This actually has an advantage in that all of the children can reach their seed and their plant to take care of it, right? They're in a row. Children can all line up in a row and be tending to their seeds at the same time. And if you plant something like carrion flower that attracts birds or insects, other pollinators who are going to be interested in eating the fruit or sipping the nectar of the flower, then you have added a second natural element to your outdoor preschool because you now have these animals for children to observe. Is there a place somewhere outside your preschool where you can have an archway? And you aren't limited to traditional vines for your archway. I've seen squash, happily growing in an archway. And just like the carrion flower adds another element to your outdoor space, an archway can be an additional element to your outdoor space, right? You could set up under the archway a lovely space for dramatic play. Or your archway could be that calm down corner, right? That area where children can go to kind of hide a little bit, have some alone time, curl up with a book or a stuffed animal or whatever you usually have in your calm down corner. Also remember that any plant that climbs up can also hang down, right? So do you have any covered area? Do you have any overhangs off the building where you could put hanging pots? Right now, if you want children to be involved in the planting of the hanging pots, you are going to have to hang them low enough that the children can reach. So you're going to want to make sure that they are very sturdily attached to whatever is above them, and that you have left walkway space in between your hanging pots. Container gardening is another choice. Now we use, even though we have limited size garden space at Wildwood Nature School, we take advantage of the fence. We have planted grapes along the fence of the garden. And we also have container gardening in our garden where each child gets their own, I don't know, maybe 6-inch in diameter, it's not very large, ceramic pot every year. And that ceramic pot is theirs to plant kind of whatever they want. I mean, within reason, right? First of all, I have to have the seed or the bulb. Secondly, I do try to steer them toward plants that will be successful in our climate. But that also gives children a chance, right? So let's say you're planting your vine along the fence, or you're planting vegetables in your garden bed. Container garden really does give children the option to make it theirs, right? And you can take those container gardens and that can be indoor gardening. You just need to make sure, again, that you are planting something that thrives in your indoor environment. So those are some options for planting if you don't have an actual garden bed, right? Plant along a fence or along a wall, right? Along the side of the building. You can create an archway, or you can plant in containers. So let's say you do have a garden, right? But it's really small. Maybe you have 1 4-foot by 4-foot bed for all of the children to use. Right? First, what I'm going to say is lucky you, because you have cut down on the amount of weeding you have to do. Second, I'm going to recommend that if you haven't heard of it, that you use a square foot gardening method. Now, traditionally, we think of gardening and we plant in rows, right? We have a row, we sow a row of lettuce seeds. We follow that up with a line of zucchini seeds. We follow that up with a line of radish seeds. So instead of planting in rows, what you're going to do is you are going to divide your garden into 1 foot by 1 foot squares. Now, you don't have to have 1 foot by 1 foot squares. That's the easiest way to do the measurements and figure out what you're going to plant. I wouldn't go bigger than 1 foot by 1 foot, but if you absolutely need to, you can do 1/2 foot by 1/2 foot. But whatever dimensions make sense, no bigger than 1 foot by 1 foot. And then what you're going to do is you're going to treat, in essence, each of those squares as its own standalone space for one type of seed. So instead of the rows, what you're going to have is you're going to plant all of your radish seeds in that one square. Right? So, and you're going to pay attention to the needs of that plant. So let's say radishes, for example, need 1 inch of space, right, in between on all directions. That means that you can plant 16 radish seeds in that 1 square foot space, right? Then you're going to move on to the next square. And so let's say you're planting lettuce in the next square. Now, lettuce, wider plant right at the top, right? You need all of those leaves to have space, right? You're going to look at the package directions and it says lettuce needs 6 inches of space. So again, you can use 6 inches in all directions. So this means that in your lettuce square, you can only plant 4 seeds. Right? You don't actually have to worry about how close your lettuce is to your radish because you are treating each square as its own separate thing. Now, you might be saying to me at this point, Nicole, I have more than 4 children in my class. Well, yeah. But what I have found is that children generally don't care what type of seed they plant. They just want to plant a seed. But so oftentimes what I'll do is we'll plant a number of things at the same time. So I might say, okay, children, today we are planting squash, radishes, and lettuce. When it's your turn, let me know. What do you want to plant? And then I can just know where we've arranged it, and each child plants. Let's say everybody does want to plant a lettuce seed. There's nothing stopping you from having 4 separate lettuce squares. In fact, right, I have learned over the years that I actually, for me, because we use our garden to cook snacks, it's actually helpful to me to have less variety and more of a certain type of plant, right? So if I only have one lettuce plant, we really can't create a snack that feeds all of the children from that one lettuce plant. So go ahead. There's nothing stopping you that says, right, you only need 1 lettuce square. You can do 4 lettuce squares. That's fine. And then in addition to maximizing your space, minimizing your weeds, this kind of square foot garden method, I find is helpful in having the children be able to reach their plants, right? If you're planting in rows and you have your 4-foot by 4-foot garden bed, that poor child who gets stuck showing the seed in the very center of the garden bed really can't reach it. Can't really reach it to create a hole, can't really reach it to water it. But if you have planted in your squares, right, you can make it so that the squares on the outside, right, everybody can reach that square that's on the frame around your garden. And then what I would do is for those center squares, whatever's in the center, I would plant something that goes up. Right, so I would use, right, tomatoes, squash, peas, pole beans, anything that you can plant in a tomato cage, because once it goes up, it's going to be easier for the children to stand up and reach it. So I hope this is just a really short primer on small space gardening. I hope this is giving you an idea of, how to maximize space if you do have a small garden bed, but also how to use any space you have for guerrilla gardening, right? And, if you are intrigued by gardening in a small space, doing nature-based preschool in a small space or an unusual space, our May workshop is actually all about this. It is all about solutions for nature in any preschool space, right? And so we're going to go through it step by step. We are going to take the time to map out our own individual preschool spaces, to think about the nature that we do have access to. Think about the strengths of your space, and I'm going to walk you through this, how to create a map of your space and all of the nature that's already there. And then second step of our workshop is, again, I am going to walk you through some creative ways to bring things into your space, to enhance the space that's already there. Simple, low cost ideas, right? And you're going to come away from the workshop with a plan, right? Both a short-term plan, things that you can tackle this summer. Right? I find that summer is a great time to make some changes to preschool. It's a little bit more relaxed. I have a little bit more time. The weather helps me want to stay outside longer. And so both a short-term plan, what can you do immediately to give children access to nature, to gardening, and then a long-term plan. What are you going to do a little bit at a time to gradually transform your outdoor space into a teaching and learning space? That is happening on May 17th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I do encourage you to be there live, because then you're going to be able to bounce ideas off of me, off of the other people that are there in the workshop. but it will be recorded if you cannot attend live. So click on the link above my head. There's also an attachment link below the video, and sign up to join us for that single workshop if you'd like, or maybe you want to join our workshops on a regular basis. We do every other month. I do a nature-based teaching workshop. On the opposite months, we meet as a membership group for a collaborative discussion. We'll tackle any sorts of things that are on your mind as members. And when you join the membership, right, then our monthly workshops are free. So I do encourage you to join our workshop and then join us here next week for another free edition of Wildwood Teaching. I will see you there.